Today I'm talking about Koibumi, released in 1953 and directed by Kinuyo Tanaka in her first film Behind the Camera. This is a post-war melodrama built around something deceptively simple, a man who writes love letters for other people, but the more you watch it, the more that love letter becomes a way to talk about power, shame, survival, and what intimacy looks like in a Japan that's trying to rebuild itself after the war. Context: a film released just before the occupation. Koibumi comes out right after a major turning point, the Allied occupation of Japan, which ends on April 28, 1952, when the peace treaty takes effect. The film at Lincoln Center describes Koibumi as releasing about a year and a half after the end of American occupation, which matters because the film's world feels like it's living in the afterimage of that period, economically, emotionally, and socially. And the film's premise immediately ties everyday romance to geopolitics. The main character ends up working at an office where he helps Japanese women write romantic letters to American servicemen. Why the director matters. Kinuyo Tanaka wasn't just a director. She was already one of the most famous actresses in Japanese cinema, and stepping behind the camera in the early 1950s was not just a neutral career move. It was a challenge to an industry structured around male authority. Cannes later described Tanaka as the second male Japanese director after Tazuko Sakane, and notes that her first film, Koibumi, was selected in competition in Cannes in 1954. That's a big signal that this wasn't just a minor debut, it was taken very seriously, internationally and in Japan. So when you watch Koibumi, it helps to keep two things in mind. One, it's a melodrama about a wounded man navigating post-war Tokyo, and it's also the first statement from a director who's navigating what kinds of stories she's allowed to tell and what kind of gaze she can bring them to. Quick plot setup. The story follows Reikichi, a repatriated veteran drifting through Tokyo while searching for Michiko, his childhood love. He's struggling financially and emotionally, and he takes work in a letter writing and translation office, basically producing romantic correspondence in English for Japanese women who are connected to American men. I'm not going to retell the whole film, but I want to focus on one core idea. The film treats love as something mediated by language, money, and occupation history, and by social judgment. Thesis. My argument is that Koibumi uses the love letter business as a metaphor for post-war intimacy. Feelings have to pass through systems: translation, labor, stigma, before they can even be spoken. And the film asks who gets punished for that system and who gets sympathy. The letter office. The letter writing office is one of the most important spaces in the film because it turns romance into a process. In a typical romantic story, a love letter is supposed to be the most private thing, one person reaching another person directly. Here, it's the opposite. Love letters are outsourced. They're commissioned, they're translated, they're edited, they're paid for. Reikichi is literally writing someone else's voice, and that's not just a clever plot device, it's an emotional position. He's a man who can't stabilize his own life, but he's being hired to manufacture the emotional stability of other people's relationships. Translation is power. Who speaks in the film? Once you see translation as a theme, a lot opens up. Translation is never neutral. It's always interpretation. Choosing tone, choosing words, choosing what gets left out. So the film quietly raises questions like, are these women speaking for themselves? Or are they being ventriloquized by the office, by Reikichi, by English itself? Is Reikichi helping them communicate or controlling how they're allowed to be understood? And even beyond language, the letters show how American presence exists in the film without always being physically present. The America in the story is often an address on paper, a destination, or a promise. It's power that circulates through systems rather than face-to-face encounters. This is why the film feels so post-occupation, even when it's not making speeches about politics. The politics are embedded in the most personal thing imaginable: love, pan, and stigma. Who gets judged? Now we get to the film's harshest social reality. The women who come to the office are often associated with post-war survival economies, including sex work and relationships with Allied soldiers. The Asian Film Archives program description is unusually direct. It calls the film a male-centered melodrama, where Reikichi helps Pan, described there as independent sex workers in post-war Japan, write romantic letters to American soldiers. and it emphasizes how a revelation about Michiko triggers his moral outrage and judgment. So what does Pan mean in this historical context? One peer-reviewed academic source, Koibumi Sakamoto, Portal 2010, describes Pan as a derogatory term for street prostitutes who served mostly Allied soldiers during the occupation years. This matters because Koibumi dramatizes a moral double standard. Eikichi's pain, shame, and trauma as a returning veteran are all legible. The film gives him space to brood, wander, and be understood by the people around him. But women's survival strategies get filtered through public disgust and male judgment, especially when their lives touch American money and American men. Eikichi's outrage. When Eikichi becomes morally outraged, it's easy to read it as a personal romantic reaction, but the film suggests something bigger. His anger carries the weight of defeat, displacement, and a masculinity that no longer knows where to stand. The Cannes profile on Tanaka frames her as a pioneering director and highlights Koibumi as the film that reached Cannes competition in 1954. So even historically, this figure was understood as speaking to a broader post-war condition, not just private melodrama. So here's the question the film pressures us to ask. Is Reikichi's judgment a form of justice, or is it a way to reclaim dignity by condemning someone more vulnerable? Style and staging. A lot of this film's meaning is carried through how Tanaka stages bodies in space. A BFI note on the film praises the geometry of Tanaka's staging, calling attention to camera position and the eye lines that capture uncertainty and expectation. Conclusion. By the end, Koibumi leaves me with a bleak but precise idea. In post-war Tokyo, love doesn't travel directly, it travels through systems, through labor, translation, money, and social punishment. Eikichi's job writing letters is the film's central metaphor because it asks what happens when even your most personal feelings have to be mediated by institutions you didn't choose. And as Tanaka's debut film, it was also quietly radical. It stages a male-centered story in a way that exposes the gender violence of judgment. Who gets empathy, who gets stigma, and who is forced to survive in the ruins of history. That's why Koibumi still lands. It's not just a romance, it's a story about the cost of trying to speak, when your voice has to pass through someone else's hands.